This video is made possible thanks to InVideo AI. More details coming up soon. Germany is, along with Spain and Austria, one of the few European countries that has not yet recovered its pre-pandemic consumption levels. And it's not just consumption, no matter which metric you look at. GDP, GDP per capita, investment, they all point in the same direction. As of today, Germany is the sick man of Europe. The days when German politicians could lecture the rest of the world on how to manage the economy are almost laughable. Look at the lazy Germans, they should take a cue from down-to-earth countries like Greece. And in this case, they would be right to say so. Not just because the Greeks are working their backsides off, but because the Germans work the fewest hours, by far the least in the OECD, and probably the world. In Germany, it's almost a national sport to take medical leave from work. And no, this is not an exaggeration. Ask anyone who lives there and tell me about it in the comments. However, the truth is that this matter is anything but funny. And not only because economic stagnation is in itself a great tragedy. Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, the geopolitical situation is red hot. And it's precisely at times like these that we cannot afford to let Europe's locomotive run out of fuel. But it doesn't end there. Germany is not only Europe's locomotive, it's also its best factory. It's the country that adds the most value to manufacturing, leaving other countries far behind. And with its huge GDP and its economy focused on making things, Germany accounts for 27% of all industrial production on the old continent. Put another way, Germany's economy is so big that one fall from them could drag the whole continent down with them. And look, news stories about German military men doing drills with broomsticks because they don't have enough weapons can be very funny, but if things get out of control and we go headlong into a war, I'm sure we won't find them so funny anymore. And I know what many of you are thinking, but come on, Germany may be in crisis, but isn't it a temporary recession caused by the Ukraine war and Russian gas? Aren't you guys just being melodramatic? Well, believe me, we are the first to wish it were so. But there is more and more evidence, more and more proof that the German problems go much deeper than they appear at first glance. So, how is the German economy really doing? Is it just a temporary slowdown, or is it worse than we thought? And perhaps the most important question, what can be done about it? Today on Visualeconomik, we tell you all about it. But first, after years of making YouTube videos, I've seen just how much goes on behind the scenes. Recently, we found a game-changing tool, InVideo AI, with its latest version, InVideo AI V3, coming soon. InVideo AI V3 brings advanced generative features, enabling you to create entire videos from just a text prompt. From engaging stories and educational content to stunning visuals, it gives you endless creative possibilities. It's like having the power of a director in your hands. For example, you can simply ask it to create a video on the 10 most incredible wonders of India and their history.
From the snow-capped Himalayas to the sun-drenched beaches, India is a land of extraordinary contrasts.
But that's just the beginning. InVideo AI V3's generative capabilities can bring any idea to life, whether it's dramatic stories, product ads, educational content, and more. Unlike other tools, InVideo AI V3 will be available to everyone in just a few weeks. With unique features like voice cloning to narrate videos in your own voice, it sets a new standard for video creation. And here's the best part. By using the link in the description, pinned comment, or by scanning the QR code, you can try InVideo AI V2 for free and create up to 4 videos with a watermark. To unlock the full potential, it's just $20 a month. Use our exclusive code Visualeconomik50 to double your video creation credits in the first month. On this channel and in the economic media in general, a leitmotif has been repeated for the last 2 years. German factories cannot operate efficiently because electricity is too expensive. This argument makes perfect sense. In just 20 years, cheap nuclear power has gone from 30% of the energy mix to 0%. Its substitute? Coal and gas. Gas, Russian gas, more than half of which came from Putin's dictatorship, even as recently as 2021. This gas has risen in price because after the sanctions, Germany had to start processing liquefied gas from the United States, with all that this entails. If you want our opinion, it would not be at all surprising if the Russians had corrupted the German government to shut down the nuclear power plants, but that is another matter. The point is that Germany exists hooked on gas, and that explains why after the Ukrainian war broke out, the national industry consumed 0.6 terawatt hours less energy every day. We're talking about savage losses in production of 18%. Now, the impact of the increase in the price of electricity exists. That cannot be denied. died. However, look at this graph. The price of gas is already worth 10% of what it was at its peak in 2023 and has practically fallen back to its pre-war price. But despite this, German industrial production has failed to regain its previous pace. While in 2008, everyone admired the flexibility and resilience of the German economy, now it seems that a single blow has been enough to leave it definitively on its knees. But let's not jump to conclusions too quickly. Okay, the energy shock can't explain the entire problem, but since the pandemic, there has been another major global event that has hit the German nation particularly hard. We're talking about China's aggressive export policy and the Euro-American response. Let's remember what we said earlier. The German economy is much more dependent on industry than its neighbors. And if we're talking about German industry, we have to talk about cars. And not just any type of car, but vehicles with combustion engines such as those of Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi. And not only that, because if you're European, you will surely also be aware of a town or city in your country that basically survives thanks to one of its factories, even if they are outside Germany. The problem? In short, the energy transition, along with the switch from the combustion engine to the electric car. Chinese subsidies and American tariffs have mortally wounded this country, and the Germans have not been able to react. In the 2008 crisis, China was one of the main reasons why Germany was able to weather the recession so well. Sales to the Asian giant soared, at the same time as German producers carved out a niche for themselves in the growing Chinese market. What happened next? We all know. Chinese factories stopped manufacturing German vehicles to focus on domestic brands such as BYD, which directly copied the Europeans. You could say that the Chinese took advantage of all the investment and knowledge that came from the West to develop their own industry, an industry that has also received very generous subsidies from the Chinese Communist Party. The result? After a long period of stagnation, sales to China have begun to decline sharply. Now, wait a minute, because here, there's also a bit of a catch. As with the energy issue, the substance is true, but the magnitude is much less significant. If you look closely, the rise in 2008 was evident, yes, but it was barely 0.7% of GDP at its highest peak. In other words, China's share of German economy remained relatively small, and the reason for this is easy to understand. German exports are extremely diversified. Sales of vehicles and parts to China have declined, yes, but they have been partly replaced by other types of exports, such as those to the United States. In reality, the overall balance has not fallen as much as many would suggest. Biden's protectionist policies have certainly not helped this to happen, but neither have they prevented German exports from continuing to grow strongly in the US. In other words, China may become a massive headache in the future, but it doesn't explain the huge recession Germany is in today. At the end of the day, it's very easy to blame problems on big events like these, but they are certainly partly right. But as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's possible that the collapse of the German economy has much deeper roots. Do you want an example? You only need to look at their demographic pyramid. Well, not so much pyramid, but it looks like Jabba the Hutt on a bad day. Of course, this isn't a problem unique to Germany, but let me give you a fact to illustrate the magnitude of the problem. In Germany, the number of deaths exceeded the number of births in 1970, already 50 years ago. Or if you prefer a more indirect metric, the internet infrastructure is of the same quality as that found in Romania. But why? Boomers are probably not very interested in watching Netflix on 4K. The German population is rapidly aging, and there are quite a few studies that find a very strong correlation between aging and loss of economic dynamism. In the end, a large number of entrepreneurs are young, and without them, there are no new companies to unseat the giants that have been at the top for almost a century. You only have to compare the date of creation of American titans such as Facebook or Nvidia with the German ones, which in many cases already existed before World War II. And if you add to this the fact that, as we have seen, Germany has the lowest working hours in the OECD and probably in the world, then the stagnation of the Colossus is no longer so surprising. So far, they've been able to defer this problem with immigration. To give you an idea, between 2013 and 2022, Germany was responsible for almost half of the entire net inflow of immigrants to Europe, with almost 6 million immigrants. But let's be honest, this immigration is, as a rule, low-skilled. Nothing to do with the wave of engineers and doctors who arrived in Germany following the 2008 crisis. During that time, this country benefited enormously from all this immigration, but now it's German engineers who are looking to go abroad. To give a concrete figure, today, Germany receives in relative terms between 5 and 10 times fewer qualified workers than the United Kingdom, Canada, Denmark, and of course, let's not mention the USA. The reasons? Well, it's not very clear. Immigration laws are some of the most open and permissive on the planet, particularly with skilled immigration. But it seems that these profiles prefer to go to other countries, either because they see better opportunities, because of taxes, or simply, what could it be? Because they dread the idea of having to learn a language like German. Be that as it may, the fact is that the country has entered a vicious circle. To meet the new challenges, Germany needs to attract young talent, but with such a severe economic recession, no one lists this country as their #1 favorite destination. However, that's not the worst of it. Germans may look like tough guys, but when it comes to investing, they are the opposite. Many people would rather keep their money in a bank account with negative real interest rates than put it in the stock market. Because they don't invest, they don't even invest in housing. To give you an idea, only 50% of Germans live in their own homes, compared to almost 80% in other Western countries. For Germans, the riskiest activity to which they can expose themselves is buying government bonds. And all this explains why. Although Germany is one of the world's biggest research and development spenders, we aren't seeing very disruptive innovations either. Why? Because investors act like ordinary Germans, always playing it safe. And naturally, without disruptive investment, it's very difficult to adapt to change.
The defining characteristic of the seemingly endless decline of Germany's industrial production is its broad base in all industrial groups. During the pandemic and after, it was mainly intermediate and capital goods. Now the malaise is much broader.
The pandemic and the trade war with China has been the spark that has exploded a problem that has been dragging on for years. In fact, if we break down the different contributions to industrial production, we see that the two things that stand out the most are the problems of investment and with intermediaries. And in relation to all this, let me ask you another question. What are the best universities in Germany? Because if I asked you about the US or the UK, you wouldn't have any doubts. But Germany, its best university is Munich, and it's only 48th according to a global ranking. That's pretty low. In the US, universities are basically giant laboratories in which classes are held from time to time. But in Germany and the European Union, they are more like placement agencies for civil servants with very little connection to the world of work. And this is just an anecdote. But is it a coincidence that one of the most successful departments in European universities is the department that studies economic degrowth? Yes, economic degrowth as a goal is not only a thing of crazy hippies, European universities are also putting a lot of money into that harmful nonsense. The degrowth thing is nuts. It's probably the biggest nonsense you hear out there, even worse than communism. But there go the Europeans with their taxes financing pipe dreams. Universities, public universities, let's remember, are increasingly part of the dominant political agenda. And if we add to this the lack of qualified personnel, we better understand things like the subsidy that Germany had to pay Intel $10 billion so that it would not leave the country. And whoever talks about Intel also is talking about Tesla and TSMC, companies that have maintained a large part of their activity in the German-speaking region on a shoestring. By the way, speaking of Tesla, do you remember the German car brands? Well, not even all of them together have a market capitalization equal to the giant built by Elon Musk. Of course, if these American companies wanted to grow in Germany, they would face another major problem: the energy transition. Let me explain. The German economy is highly dependent on CO2 emissions. Its rate of emissions per person associated with industry is almost twice as high as that of France. And which country has one of the highest CO2 taxes? That's right, Deutschland, Germany. In other words, any industrial initiative that hopes to solve the problems is going to run into a wall because it has shot itself in the foot with the energy transition. Now, let's stop for a moment because it's not always a matter of ending on such a negative note. It's not the first time that Germany has been the sick man of Europe. In the 1990s, in fact, it was also growing below Spain and Greece. And guess what? It was able to turn things around. In the last 2 years, GDP has fallen less than industrial production, basically because industry has become somewhat more efficient. In other words, it is doing more with less. And on the energy front, there is good news on the horizon. Decades of subsidies have failed to remove coal from the energy mix and increase the presence of renewables. But a few months ago, a historic deregulation package was approved. To give you an idea, just 2 years ago, a wind farm of only 3 windmills required a report of more than 36,000 pages. But now, many of these procedures have been cut to zero. You could see the result on the screen, an unprecedented boom. The country is wounded, yes, and the challenges ahead are enormous. But if history has taught us anything, it's that we should never, ever give up on Germany. By the way, in the next video, we'll talk about how Alternative for Germany, or AfD, the new far-right party, wants to change the country's economy. Stay tuned to the channel and subscribe so you don't miss it. But for the moment, it is now your turn. Did you know about Germany's situation? Is it really a transitory problem, or does it suffer from chronic problems? Will it manage to get back on its feet to lead Europe once again before it's too late? You can leave me your answers in the comments. And as always, don't forget that here on Visualeconomik, we release new videos every week, so subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell so you don't miss any of our updates. And if you like the video, go ahead and like it, and I'll see you in the next one. All the best. See you next time.